I decided to make this video because as a fan of A Song of Ice and Fire, as like a diehard, I have tattoos of the symbols and sigils on my skin. I'm just a super fan, right? Because I am that, I decided to make this video. Not that that means that I'm better than anybody else who enjoys this material as much as I do. But listen, one of the biggest things that people are saying is like, Winter Winter's not coming. We got that update from Martin, but that doesn't mean nothing. He said he'd finish it back in 2015. In this video, I want to explain 5 different reasons why I think Winds is going to be not only the biggest book in A Song of Ice and Fire, but also why I think it's kind of been taking so long. If you enjoy my content, and you enjoy this video in particular, after you watch it, please slap a like on it. The like goal is going to be 420. And then also, make sure you're subscribed and have those notifications turned on. A super special thank you to these individuals right here. They are all members of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. Without them, these videos really wouldn't be possible. And thank you again for watching, and thanks for your support. Okay, so the first point that I want to make is, number 1, the sheer number of POVs. There's just so many characters. It's kind of hard to write A Song of Ice and Fire because this story is being told from multiple different people's perspective. And it'd be one thing if they were all somewhat close and involved in the same plot line, but that is definitely not the case. Eventually, a lot of the characters will meet up and their plots are starting to mingle, but for the most part, Martin is writing a story that is being told from the perspective of so many different people. That alone is difficult. He has to make sure that he doesn't contradict himself and that eventually, at the end of this story, all of the plots ravel in together. Like for instance, we have Cersei in King's Landing. She just recently got out of jail and had to walk through the streets naked. Now, she has Sir Robert Strong about to fight for her in a trial by combat. Then Daenerys, who's literally 2 worlds away, has just narrowly escaped death by flying off on the back of Drogon, and she's now at Drogon's lair. Well, wait, actually, no, she's not. She tried to walk away from Drogon's lair, Dragonstone, because, well, she's hungry, and she's thirsty, and she's tired of eating Drogon's leavings. Like, she's literally picking marrow and little chunks of charred meat off of the bones from Drogon's kills. She needs fresh water. She decides that she wants to start walking back to civilization because eventually all rivers lead back to the area where she's familiar with. But she stops along the way and eats some berries that make her sick. She swears up and down that these are the same berries that the Dothraki women used to season their meat and food with. Obviously that's not the case. She starts retching. Then a freaking Khalasar shows up and is about to take her hostage until Drogon lands behind her. Now, she's going to do what she did in Game of Thrones Season 6. Then you have Jon Snow, who's double the world away, closer to Cersei, but still equally as far in distance and likelihood of their plots mingling. But Jon Snow is dead. Like, he just got stabbed. Mind you, it's not like it happens on the TV show where no one's around him and he kind of just has to be discovered by Davos. That's not the case. He's stabbed kind of like in the midst of everything that's going on at Castle Black. One Wegdar 1-1 just beat Patrick Flowers to a bloody pulp, and Jon is trying to calm down the giant when, guess what? He's stabbed between the shoulder blades, and he never feels the last knife, and he just falls to the ground saying the word ghost. But Melisandre is literally right there, and she could have potentially seen it all happen. She's going to bring back Jon Snow, but like I said, his plot is nowhere even close to being connected somewhat, aside from Cersei sending assassins to kill him at the wall, but failing miserably. All of these people's plots are nowhere near as connected as they were in the latter seasons of Game of Thrones. George has a lot of writing to do. Now, the next point that I wanted to make was point number 2, and this is the faster point. I don't have to explain it as much, is that it's been so long since the release of A Dance with Dragons in 2011, he has to make up for the time by making the writing in this next book, The Winds of Winter, even better than it was in A Feast for Crows, in A Clash of Kings, in A Storm of Swords, in A Game of Thrones, in A Dance with Dragons. It has to be the best book of the series to date because it has taken the longest. Also, and this is another point that I wanted to make later, George R. R. Martin is a perfectionist. He wants to make sure this story is as good as it should be. Now, the next point that I wanted to make, and this will be the third one for the video, is the plot, most of the plot that's been happening in the earlier books, has to either be wrapped up in Winds of Winter or cut, because there's only one book after this, A Dream of Spring, and if we're judging by history, it could be 2030s before we get that book. So Martin really needs to buckle down in the Winds of Winter and wrap up plots from the earlier books, like what's going on with Breanne and Jaime in the Riverlands, what's going on with Cersei and her trial by combat, Daenerys with Drogon and that Khalasar that just discovered her, and then Jon Snow being dead, and then Tyrion being so close to Daenerys but not, and now using different people to sort of help her, kind of, really. And then you also have Aegon, who just got really introduced in the last book, and what's going on with Jon Connington having grayscale and being in the Stormlands, passing it to everybody. Like, there is so much to wrap up. George has to, like I said, buckle down, and that is my strongest point for why Winds is taking so long, and also why it's going to be the biggest and best book of the series to date. The last point that I want to make for this video, this one kind of puts a nail on the head, is that this book, The Winds of Winter, has to make up for time, but also what happened with Game of Thrones' ending in Season 8. Like, it was cut short for Season 7 and Season 8. It didn't have full 10-episode seasons. Dan and Dave didn't have any of Martin's source material to work with because they either burned through most of it, or he's taking too long to release The Winds of Winter, so they sort of had to guess how it was going to end. But this book has to make up for that. Not just the 11-year wait since the dance came out, but also the bitter taste left in the mouth of most book purists and just most fans in general, because there's at least one thing about Game of Thrones Season 8 that they didn't agree with. I think most people is that it wasn't told. All of the plot lines weren't flushed out all the way, and that's because they wrapped it up early. They didn't have 10-episode, 2 final seasons like they had planned on it. But also, George wanted them to do like 10 or 11 seasons. So it's kind of all hearsay at this point. The show's over. This book, The Winds of Winter, has to make up for that somewhat. I'm pretty sure George feels as though somewhat responsible for how Game of Thrones Season 8 ended in the series in and of itself. Now, one of my favorite things to do while making these videos is to discuss what's happening with characters, at least their latest POV in A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, and then making predictions for what's going to happen in Winds of Winter. So if you all want me to make sort of like a part 2, or make this like a 5 or 10 part video series discussing each character in depth, then just let me know down below in the comment section, and I'll actually get started on that right away. Super special thank you to every single person you see listed right here. They are all members of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/yourhuntsforreviews. And if you watching this are unfamiliar with what Patreon is, it's just a way to help combat the low ad revenue that I make from YouTube. I put a lot of time and energy into these videos, and YouTube really only ranks them in their algorithm for a few hours, and then they get sort of washed out, which is why a lot of these videos don't get very many views. So Patreon is just a way to combat that. But if you all enjoy my content enough and you want to leave a tip, monthly or just a one-time tip, check out the links down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews. Along that, Zeldrizas, Abuzdari, Ixos, Daor.